And right now, let's welcome our first guest, businessman and author Robert Kiyosaki. He's the founder of Rich Global LLC and the Rich Dad Company. He's also author of the new book, Fake. Fake Money, Fake Teachers, Fake Assets, How Lies Are Making the Poor and Middle Class Poorer. Robert, thanks for joining us here again on The Income Generation.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about my favorite subject, fake.
Your favorite subject, that's right. So obviously, you wrote the book in many ways because you yourself recognize that there is a mistrust that a lot of people have for the media, for the government, for other sources. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that's grown so much over the last few years?
I don't know, and it's really topical. I have this the latest Economist right here, and then in here it talks about policing propaganda. So I'll give you a really long answer to a short question. When I was a kid, there was only one television station. Today, there's 50 million. Everybody's got a YouTube channel and all this stuff. There's so much information going out now. And this article here from The Economist talks about how Elizabeth Warren took out an ad saying that Zuckerberg endorsed Trump. It got through, and so even The Economist says that it's just this whole internet thing is nothing but a pack of lies. So it's really important we understand who we're getting information from. Do we trust them or not trust them?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting because your whole story about your rich dad versus your poor dad, your rich dad had a healthy distrust, even back then, of the system in general and what we're taught in our schools as to how to be successful versus how to be unsuccessful. And at the end of the day, it was that rich dad's distrust that really shaped much of what you've done over the course of your lifetime, has it not?
Correct. Well, my rich dad was a man who never went to school. He was one of these guys who was kind of he was a natural entrepreneur is what he was. And then my poor dad was the head of education for the state of Hawaii, a PhD. And so the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is a juxtaposition about what a rich man tells their kids versus a academic tells their kids. They're not the same thing. And today we have this growing gap between the rich and everybody else. And a lot of it stems from the fact that we have no financial education in our schools. So that's why I wrote the book.
Okay. So I want to get to the schools, but let's take the first step. The media. How can our Income Generation members that are watching you right now, watching the show, how they can watch or listen to a certain media source and determine whether they can trust that source or not?
Well, that's probably the $25 million question or whatever you say it. One of the reasons I like YouTube and all this versus what I would say is CNBC or ABC or all those guys is on YouTube, I get to listen to people I want to listen to. Whether I agree with them or not, I'll listen to them for 10, 20, 30 minutes. Where if I'm on national television, I get 4 minutes. If I'm in the paper, I don't trust a reporter because as a person who does many interviews, I'll say something to a journalist, a print reporter, and they'll completely twist it. Right, so at least here you're hearing me say what I say, and your viewers can hear and see me saying what I say. But when it's in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, you don't know if the reporter has their own bias in it, and that's the challenge.
Yeah, and of course they all do have biases. I mean, as human beings, we all have biases. And then, of course, when we're a reporter for a certain organization, now we have the pressure of those organizational biases too on our shoulders. So if you stay with us for a minute, Robert, I'd really appreciate it. We need to take a break. You stay with us also. We'll be back here in a moment coming up in the Income Generation. We'll be right back with Robert Kiyosaki. Right now, let's welcome back businessman and author Robert Kiyosaki. Robert, thanks so much for sticking around.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, I hadn't heard anybody really talk about watching YouTube and the reason for it quite the way you did, but it makes a lot of sense to me. But let's say for some reason, I'm not a computer person, I'm not going to watch YouTube, all right? At bare minimum, it sounds like, if I can read your mind for a moment, it sounds like, gosh, if I'm going to watch Fox News, I also should watch CNN and MSNBC to get opposing views, so that by getting all the information, I can then decide what makes sense for me. At bare minimum, would you agree with that?
Exactly. I mean, what you want is especially the view you don't agree with, because then you have a complete view. Too many people just want to listen to the person they like or agree with versus listen to the person who is contrarian to their point of view. That's the difference. That's
true. We all want to hear what we want to hear. So, this guy sounds like me. What I say to myself in my own head when nobody's paying attention. So I'm going to watch him. But you don't grow. You don't expand that way. Much like, and I know you love your poor dad, but much like your poor dad never really got to expand because he got into the world of academia and the way he's taught to do it the right way. And those are the blinders that he went through life wearing, essentially, correct?
Right, correct, exactly. And today what's happening to young people, I can't believe what they're being taught in school. They have these safety zones and you can't hurt their feelings, the snowflake generation. Yeah, I'm a Vietnam era Marine. You hurting my feelings was where you started.
I was just interviewing somebody the other day to work here in the office, and we're pretty fast-paced, so I was worried about people who are overly thin-skinned. And I looked at her resume. She seemed really quiet, really shy. When I looked at her resume, though, and she had been in the military for 4 years, I immediately thought, I don't have to worry about that. If you can make it through basic training, through 4 years in the military, you've got to be able to do something right, especially if you make it through Vietnam, for goodness sake. So all right, you talk about how what we're learning today in schools is helping really make the poor and the middle class even poorer. Tell us about that and why.
Right, that's why I wrote my book, Fake, fake money, fake teachers, and fake assets. You got to be careful who your teachers are and who defines your assets. There's this great book. I like reading books. I'm never a good student, but there's this great book called Capital, and it's out by this guy Thomas Piketty, and he's for the first time studied what causes the gap between the rich and everybody else. This is not a new phenomenon. So he goes into Malthus, Ricardo, and then Marx for the last 300 years or so. But it's very, very interesting. It comes down to, because your show is income generation, but what he starts with is what kind of income do you work for? So there's income from labor, and that's why Rich Dad said the rich don't work for money. And there's income from capital. So I'm a capitalist. My income does not come from my work. My income comes from my real estate, my stocks, my bonds, my assets, my businesses, and my employees. So I'm a capitalist. But our schools teach us to be laborers, go to school to get a job. And if you know anything about taxes, the people, unfortunately, that work for money pay the highest taxes, and people that work for capital, income from capital, pay the least taxes. So when you think about the net effect of not having to pay taxes, it affects your incomes immensely. So that's why this book here, Capital, is the first study on what causes the rich and the gap between the rich and the poor, and it's getting worse. That's my concern.
And I've read your book, and I love it. I think everyone should read it. I really do mean that sincerely. It was funny you talk about that. I was actually with someone just a couple days ago who actually bought a 737, and his comment was, well, I got to write the whole thing off. And of course, that's because he's a business owner, he's an entrepreneur. So 1 minute left. Tell our income generation members who are close to retirement, who are trying to get ready, what they should do, in your opinion, to be best prepared for retirement.
Well, the one thing I talk about in Fake is I don't save money. I don't save the U.S. dollar. And the dollar is really strong. But since 1972, when I was flying in Vietnam, I started investing in gold and silver. And today I have millions in gold and silver. So today the biggest investment I see for asset protection is silver. Silver's at the lowest price for 20-something years or something. So I always tell people that rather than saving the dollar, because the dollar is pretty corrupt right now. They print it, the zero interest rate policy. I mean, why would you save dollars? So I would say I would just save silver right now till this whole thing blows over.
So what you're saying is, once you've satisfied your income needs from investments or from pensions and everything, then if you're looking for what you consider to be a safe haven with some growth potential, go to precious metals, because it's not tied to the dollar or any fiat currency for that matter. So we need to leave it there for now. Robert, thanks so much for being back in the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for always having me on your program. I appreciate it.